Thanks for listening to the GOSH podcast. GOSH stands for the Gynecologic Oncology Sharing Hub, an open space for real and evidence-based discussions on gynecologic cancers. We'll share the stories of gynae cancer patients and survivors and hear from researchers and clinicians who are working behind the scenes to improve the lives of people with gynecologic cancers. Our podcast is produced and recorded on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. It is produced by the Gynecologic Cancer Initiative, a province-wide initiative in British Columbia with the mission to accelerate transformative research and translational practice on the prevention, detection, treatment, and survivorship of gynecologic cancers.
Hi, I'm Nicole Kay.
And I'm Stephanie Lamb.
And you're listening to the GOSH podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the GOSH podcast. I'm Stephanie. Today, I'm very happy to introduce Anita Wright, a patient partner with the Gynecologic Cancer Initiative. You may have remembered her powerful story just a couple episodes earlier this season. We also have some really exciting news to share. Anita will be joining Nicole as the new co-host of the GOSH podcast. Over the last couple months and years, I've transitioned into a new role as a knowledge exchange leader for mental health and substance use service at Fraser Health Authority. So I will be moving on from the GOSH podcast. It's been an incredible journey, and we're very excited to have new voices on the podcast to continue sharing patient stories, research, and just really important information about gynecologic cancer. So Anita Wright is a 76-year-old cake artist from New Westminster with more than 600,000 followers on TikTok. Anita, known as TikTok Nana, has captured hearts with her mesmerizing acrylic piping art. Once a marketing manager, she found her artistry after retiring and starting her own event business in Toronto. Upon moving to Vancouver in 2017, she ventured into baking custom cakes and sharing her creations online. In 2022, Anita received a stage 3 ovarian cancer diagnosis, and she's been openly communicating about this diagnosis to her followers and now uses her platform to document her ovarian cancer journey, aiming to increase awareness from this type of cancer. Welcome to the podcast, Anita, and thank you so much for stepping into this role and continuing to use your voice and sharing your experience with the GOSH podcast audience.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, to take on the role of the co-host of this GOSH podcast. You have no idea what it means to me. Thank you. So it's my understanding that Stephanie and Nicole launched this GOSH podcast back in October 2020, right in the middle of COVID. Wonderful pandemic that we all had. Over the past 4 years, you produced more than 50 episodes. And I think we're going to discuss some of those milestones that you guys have reached and the wonderful stories that the guests have shared with us.
Amazing.
Stephanie will miss you, though.
I know.
And
it's very bittersweet, but I think this is definitely the right move to kind of continue sharing the most up-to-date evidence and stories from patients and researchers. And so I'm really looking forward to where the both of you are going to be able to take this platform and continue sharing all of this important message with the audience and the GCI community.
Well, I certainly haven't known you for very long, but I can tell already by your energy how much you've added to this. And I know that everybody's going to miss you.
Oh, thank you.
Stephanie, in the very first episode of the podcast, Nicole and yourself discussed the mission and the goals that you set for the podcast. How do you feel that you have achieved the goals so far? Are you where you wanted to be?
That's a really great question. And I think Nicole chime in here because I think where I really came from as someone who was part of the GCI team was wanting to build a patient-centered and patient-oriented platform to share voices. And really the reason why we had selected this platform was because of your idea, Nicole, and, really kind of pulling from those experiences and those stories and wanting to build a platform that patients identified as, being a really impactful and powerful platform. So honestly, to me, even just the creation of a platform where we were able to come together as and share patient stories and patient voices. The whole design of the podcast was driven by, someone with lived experience was really kind of the main mission for myself. And, just the ability to then go on and share all of these different stories, as well as, the latest research findings from the group at the GCI has kind of exceeded my expectations of the podcast and has really kind of flourished into a platform where it's turned into so much more than what I initially imagined. But Nicole, I'd love to hear your perspective, because this was your brainchild, I guess. This was your baby back 4 years ago.
It's crazy to think that it's been 4 years and we started this, Anita. Stephanie and I had no idea what we were doing. Like, we Googled how to start a podcast and taught ourselves how to edit and kind of just worked through all the nerves of what are we doing? How do we sound? What is it going to be like? So it was a really somewhat intimidating but fun process. And I really hadn't thought too much about what it might become or the community that we would build. It just felt like a good place to start and to grow something, because it had been helpful for me to use podcasts while I was going through my journey, to fill my time, to it just sparked my okay, well, this might be something that could help people connect. And originally I thought more around just from the patient perspective and, helping share stories and making sure people didn't feel so alone while they were going through their journey. But as Stephanie and I started to collaborate and talk more about, how could this idea also support, the initiative of the GCI, blending in the voice of physicians and scientists and bringing in research that a lot of us who are more on the patient side or in the community might not have access to, or, get as in-depth as we've been able to go, I think just brought a whole different element to the community that we were starting to build. And I love that. I love that we brought both perspectives. And we then, have moved on to provide all different types of stories and bring loved ones in and really create such a wonderful space to provide insights and bring people essentially together, which I love. So I kind of agree with you, Stephanie. It really far exceeded any expectations that I would have had. It was just a little idea that I thought might be wonderful to do. So it's been so great to be a part of this over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Stephanie, you've got a lot of experience in healthcare through your role at PHSA and now at Fraser Health. How has this multifaceted journey shaped your perspective on patient care in the gynecological cancer?
Yeah, for sure. I think, over the last couple of years, I guess it's only been about 2 years since I've stepped away from my role at the GCI. But over the last 2 years, I've learned a lot about interfacing with our healthcare system. And, I'm sure as the both of you have experienced firsthand, our healthcare system, there are many benefits to it, but there are also many challenges. And I think that, as someone who works intimately with the healthcare system, I think oftentimes we focus on trying to find ways to address the challenges, and I think more and more now in healthcare, I'm seeing that there are folks who are really prioritizing patient voices and patient experiences. And that is something that's just so fundamentally important. And it's always been something that I've held onto as a belief, even as I've interfaced with the GCI and research that patient voices really should be at the center of what we do as a system. And it's been really amazing to kind of see more and more patient voices being brought to the forefront of the way that we do everything from planning, from, prioritizing, from, evaluating and acquiring knowledge, right? I think that those experiences and those voices are really fundamental. But also at the same time, like, I think my experience in the healthcare system has allowed me to really kind of understand some of the other challenges with healthcare. I think that, integrating patient voices and patient experiences is so important. But then also, how do we balance that with some of the multitude of other challenges and experiences of people interfacing with the healthcare system? A big thing that has came up over the last couple of years over the course of COVID is, thinking about our workforce. And so I think those things are also really important to consider. And I think it's been really impactful to be able to kind of look at the system from multiple perspectives and be able to kind of understand how we can all work towards prioritizing the patient voice while still making sure that we're building a system that is healthy for everyone, as well as healthy for our planet and our earth and all of those sorts of things. So it's been a really impactful journey to kind of, as I navigate different spaces within the healthcare system. But it all kind of comes back down to how we're able to build the patient voice into the work that we do at various different levels within our environment and within our control.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I didn't know that before. I have to say, I didn't know that. But certainly over the last few years of my journey, I certainly get that now.
Yes, yeah. And it's a challenge, right? Because I think it's something that is not easy to see unless you're intimately connected with the system, right? And so I think that's sometimes becomes a challenge for folks to understand, even folks who work within the system, right? I think there are many people behind the functioning of our massive healthcare system, and sometimes people can't understand and appreciate the intricate challenges that are at the front lines because they can't see it, right? And so for myself, that's something that I try to be very mindful of going into the work that I do, is that I will never fully understand what it's like to, one, work in the front lines, and two, be at the point of care in many kind of situations, right? So if I can keep that in mind and lean on the experiences and expertise of frontline folks, patients, people with lived experience, I think we would all be able to better serve our system and better serve our communities and people who interface with the system. So yeah, it's been a really amazing journey to kind of have all of these learnings. And it's crazy to think that it's really, my passion for bringing in the patient voice really came from the GCI, this podcast, working with folks like yourselves. And it has been really influential in the way that I now do the work that I do in my professional life.
I think you've been really influential, though, as well, bringing the patient voice into the GCI, in your previous role, all the support and the advocacy that you had for us and ensuring that we were, taken care of and had opportunities to get involved and, really just spearheading a lot of those initiatives.
Yeah.
You've done a lot for us as patients and ensuring that our voices are heard. So very grateful for the work that you have done and, really excited to see what you now continue to do in your new space.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think one of the things that I also wanted to add was like, I think the functioning of the podcast and the enterprise of the GCI has been made possible by so many people. And I'm so grateful to those folks for leaning into this and for trusting, this sort of platform and trusting this approach, because I think it has really shaped the GCI in a way that is different from a lot of other research groups. Even folks like Almira with her behind the scenes work on this podcast, from, Michelle, Madison, Gavin, and all of the, various researchers and clinicians who are all behind the scenes supporting these sorts of platforms and supporting this sort of work is really kind of what has enabled it to kind of really flourish into this amazing space. So always grateful for those folks. And I'm only curious about kind of where this platform will continue to grow, and will only support it moving forward. I think as I was reflecting, Nicole, I think we were talking about like, this is the 4th year of the podcast. There's been a lot of transition, a lot of change. Things have looked differently for me, for you, for Almira. We have Anita joining the team, but Nicole, for you, like what are your most memorable moments and working on the podcast? Are there any particular episodes? What has stood out for you?
There's so many great episodes, but I think some of the one of the ones that was a real standout, like for me personally, was the one with Dr. Lori Brotto, and that was I think it was in the end of our first season on cancer survivorship. Sexual health and mindfulness was the title of the episode, and I had shared my story quite a bit leading up to that, and I have talked very openly about fertility loss and the impact that had had on me. But I hadn't talked about the impact on like my sexual health and the challenges that I faced there. And, it was something that I was struggling with and was really challenged in getting the right, supports and managing menopause at 33. And that episode, like Lori, I just remember her, I'd have to listen to it to remember exactly what she said, but I just like it was very helpful in me to kind of find the language and have someone, create space to be open and share that, and be okay with the fact that like this does have a huge impact and life does change very differently in a lot of different ways. And that has a real impact on your mental well-being as well. And it doesn't have to be like, there are supports and there is a way to work through it. So that one was one. And then there was another one around the survivorship clinic with Lisa Dawson.
Yes.
That was another one that like just personally, like she had talked about like you just kind of hitting this wall, and there had been so many things that in my own journey that like I just felt so validated. And so there was a lot of like, even though we were interviewing other people and sharing different stories or work that some of these physicians were doing, there was a lot of like healing and validation for myself, just going through the journey. And then having guests who were patients and also sharing their stories and having them provide their feedback to us afterwards, that like, this was actually really therapeutic for you two to hold that space for me and allow me to come here and talk about been through. And that also, like, not even just pointing specific patients or their episodes, but just that feedback and knowing the impact that's had on someone else also was really memorable and really felt like this is a way that I can give back and I can do something for this community. And that's really special and it's really powerful. And it means a lot. And I said this before, but like, it feels like, maybe there is some reason or some purpose for, going through what you've gone through to come out on, the other side of it and to give back. Provides some sort of value.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much you being able to do that helps you along.
Yeah.
And yet you think you're doing the reverse, that you're taking it from somebody, but you're not really, you're giving it back out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm trying to like recall like I should have gone through, and there's so many good. There's so many good. What was the one that we did where they were doing the documentary?
You're right. It was on the elimination of cervical cancer, or something like that. They did a documentary and talked about the WHO's declaration to end cervical cancer worldwide. And we were part of that campaign to kind of share the documentary. Another crazy experience because they were all the way in Australia, right? On the other side of the world. And so, yeah, it's crazy to kind of think back on it. And Nicole, as you were talking, what both you and Anita were saying about community and giving back was huge, right? Because I think it's so interesting that, I've found this too, is like a lot of the feedback, even when talking about the Patient Family Advisory Council, bringing patients together to talk through certain, to develop resources, has not only been beneficial for the creation of that material, but also I've had so many experiences and stories of people coming back and saying, this was the first time that I've been in the space with so many people going through the same thing. And that was in of itself powerful to them to be able to kind of sit in that space and to be able to share those experiences. And then I think about all of the different, some of the really interesting episodes that we were able to do. I remember that Rose, one of the patient partners, and I did an episode in Cantonese, and it was widely popular. And it was also, just thinking through that kind of components about language accessibility and how, probably for many people in that community was the first time being able to hear a story like Rose's in their native language, right? And so it's been a really amazing journey to kind of, think back and reflect on all of these episodes and the ability to kind of share all of these experiences with a community, and for it to just be there. Now when people look back and do research, they might come across this podcast, and those tidbits and those experiences will always be there for people to listen back on and to kind of have that as part of their knowledge. Yeah.
To being able to collaborate with other groups as well. Ovarian Cancer Canada. And then we went on to the Women's Health Research Institute's podcast to talk about creating the podcast and why we wanted to do that, being able to also jump into each other's communities and kind of build on the following and you've sort of touched different facets of people in the gynae cancer space. So those were wonderful opportunities as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And I think this bleeds in really nicely with Anita, your background, right? I'm very curious, Anita, how you maybe see your role as the podcast host alongside with your presence on TikTok and that social media platform, right? Because I think that's a huge platform.
Well, when I started on TikTok and Instagram, I was really doing it basically because my grandson suggested I put some of my cakes on there. So down the rabbit hole, and very, very quickly, I got, I think it was 15 million views on one of my cakes that I did. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
I'm and quite honestly, I'm actually 77 now as of last week. There's not a lot of people my age that really are engaged in social media. Why I like it so much, but I do. But once I was hooked on that and I started building the platform, shortly after that, and you talk about maybe things happen for a reason, shortly after that, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Well, as you probably know, the algorithms on social media don't really like you changing stream unless you have gone down that way originally. So I've added my ovarian cancer story to the TikTok and to the Instagram. And of course, they don't bring as much to it because that's not why people watch me there. But I did find on there when I started doing that I offered to people, reach out to me. I promise I will. If you've got any kind of cancer, reach out to me. I don't know anything about all sorts of other cancers, but from a medical point of view, I don't know anything except my own journey. But let me tell you, I can help you. I know I can help you think about things a little bit differently. I can help you find the questions that you didn't know you need to ask. All the non-medical things that I've learned over the last 2 years, quite frankly, I wouldn't have given them up. I don't like the end of the day prognosis that comes along with this journey that we're having or that I'm having. But I have had so many silver linings. I've had so many wonderful people reach out to me. And I know for a fact that I have been able to help quite a few people. That's all I need, to be able to help a few people. I want to go into the chemo room sometimes and walk around because I had chemo yesterday. I want to go around the room and just go up to all of the people and say, did you know, can I do all of these kind of things? And I think things like terminology, these are the kinds of things I'd like to change. I hear people in there saying they're having the red devil. This is the drug they're having. Why not call it a aperitif, a cocktail? Something a lighter light to it than calling it the red devil, because immediately you're scared of it. The moment they do that. And I just feel that there's so much positivity that I can bring through the TikTok and the Instagram to try and help people know, yeah, chemo's not fun, but it doesn't have to be as bad as everybody thinks it is. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people I have told that they've been very fearful for nausea. The drugs that we get today, there's not anywhere near that like there was 40 years ago. But it's the nausea that stands out with people because that's how it's always depicted on TV or whatever. So these are the roles I want my social media to take. I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to give them the questions that they need to ask, ideas, things that can help them get through things, different way of thinking about things. And I'm just hoping that some of those hundreds of thousands of people will gain something out of it. So it's my intent to take this wherever I can. If I can post it there, whatever parts I can put up there, any snippets we get, we can put up there. Let's just, wear it out, get it out there.
And I love that, Anita, because I think one of the challenges is you don't know what you don't know. So you get your diagnosis and it's incredibly overwhelming and it's scary. And if you had, most of us have never been through it. You may have not supported anyone through it. You literally have no idea. There's no handbook that says, ask these questions when you arrive to the first appointment. It's all trial and error. And even those of us who have, been within the healthcare community or in that world still struggle to advocate and find the resources and the support that we need, even just the words or the questions. So I love that you are helping and sharing your knowledge, because there is so much value in, like, I can only imagine how many people you will touch and support through and do that. Like, I had somebody who I had connected with right early on, and she was my resource through my whole journey, because she had just recently gone through it and was very similar. And without her support, it would have been so much harder. And I stumbled on a YouTube full series of someone who documented her journey. She's taken it down now, but those things were also like so incredibly helpful. And we are looking to social media to find answers these days. Like, that's where we are learning and we are connecting. So I love what you've built, and I love how, perhaps we can use the knowledge that you have of leveraging TikTok and Instagram in the way that you do to, support the podcast. But then, can we help share more of what we're doing in this space through those mediums as well? It would be wonderful to see. And through some of the stuff that we've done with the GCI, like, we don't find out about, like, you hear about something from someone else, but, it depends on who you saw, or, what facility you were treated in, or what doctor you had, or, timing in like what you get access to. And so closing the gaps on educating people on what is available as you go through your journey is just so critically important to feel, supported, and not just like while you're undergoing treatment, but it's the after piece too. And, you are very well supported through a team, when you doing any sort of treatment, or at least I felt like through, my chemo and radiation and surgery, had a whole bunch of people, and then you're done. And then that's when the real impact of what you've been through hit. It felt like a job, when I was going through that.
That's how my moments ago.
Yeah.
This is my job.
Yeah, it's your full-time job, and it's very scheduled, and your day is filled, and it's easy to kind of get into that routine. But then afterwards, you're back out in your regular world, and everything's different, and it's and then the impacts of what you've gone through starts to show, and that can be a very lonely and challenging space to be in too.
Well, I'm aspiring to.
Yeah, I love it.
No, I'm loving where this conversation is going, and I think even in the last little bit, we talked so much about kind of what are some of the hopes for the future of this space, and how to kind of continue building connection and education and closing the gap on all of those pieces. And as we wrap up here, I'd love for the both of you to just share a little bit, if it's a little bit just about what your hopes are for this platform, and as the platform continues onwards, where are you hoping to take it?
Well, personally, I just want to take it as far and wide as we can. I see no end to where we need to go with this.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to do. And I don't see any reason why we can't do that collectively. What a group.
Yes. Absolutely.
I agree with Anita. I think we have created over the last 4 seasons and 4 years a lot of like really wonderful, valuable content. And we've reached people all over the world. But I do feel like we've scratched the surface on how many people we could reach. And I think there's a lot of avenues that we could take to just, grow that. I don't think like Anita said, I don't think there's any end to it. I think there's a lot of
and we've got to take it as far as we can until there's an end.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that's exactly what the podcast will benefit from is that energy and that desire to, continue growing and to continue building it out, continue, sharing new knowledge, sharing the way that we do things sharing the way that, different services, new information. Every day, I know that, the researchers at the GCI are discovering more and more about gynecologic cancers, and there's always more information that can be shared. So I'm really excited for the future of the GOSH podcast. And again, welcome and thank you, Anita, for stepping on into this role. And I'm really looking forward to where the both of you will take the platform and continue sharing this really valuable message and information on gynecologic cancers.
Thank you so much. Thank you for entrusting me with this partnership.
Of course.
Very excited to continue on this journey with you, Anita and Stephanie. Thank you for going on this journey with me for the last 4 years. It's been
the last 4 years. It's been crazy, hasn't it?
a journey.
Good job, lady.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much. It's been a real pleasure and a real journey, and I will always be behind you both, cheerleading and rooting for this work, because I wholeheartedly believe in it.
Thanks for joining us on the GOSH podcast. To learn more about the Gynecologic Cancer Initiative and our podcast, make sure to check out our website at gynecancerinitiative.ca.